really our first. Is this our first post-election? First, I'm sorry, not election. Post-inauguration
Right.
show?
This is our first show of the Trump era.
Of the Trump era.
The Trump era.
Wow. So, and I obviously, for one, was very sorry to see the Obama era pass into history because,
right.
I was really into that.
It's like, don't let the helicopter door hit you on the way out.
Hit you on the way out.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you lucky few out there who get to see my promo, and it's only a few because only a few people read it, I don't know why. I had a little discussion in my promo about, when the rabbi told me what the topic was, we had a discussion of what are the similarities between two of the great leaders of our time. One, obviously, Donald J. Trump, and two, Moses B. Amram. two great leaders of our time. One was making America great, and one was making Israel great.
Right.
These two great leaders.
Make Israel great again. That's when he came back to Egypt with a new banner. Make Israel great again.
Great again. He came back, and he had that hat, which you've seen him in the hat, which is pretty cool.
Right.
So I came up with just a couple similarities and differences of them, and I figured I'd just read a couple of them. I didn't want to bore you with that. A couple of them I came with I think that everybody would agree with. So let me just read a couple of these here. We had, okay, well, here's one. Moses was able to choose from several women to select his brides, and Donald was able to choose and continue to choose from many women to find his brides, which is one of the similarities. And let me get to some good ones here. Moses promised to build a tabernacle and have all the tribes pay for it, and Donald promised to build a wall and have the Mexicans paid for it. That was one of the similarities. And here's was a good one. Moses eventually came to power following a Hebrew-hating, narcissistic dictator. Donald, ditto, same thing. Same thing. See, I can throw that one in.
Okay.
And here's two more I'll just give you real quick. The main electoral challenge to Moses was from a person named Korach, if you remember, whom eventually was swallowed up by the earth along with his entire family. And the main electoral challenge to Donald was of a person named Clinton, and we're still waiting and anticipating on the rest of it to see how that works right there, so we're not sure. And I'll just give you one more. I think you like Moses, if you remember from the movie, if you saw that. Moses raised his hands and parted the sea to allow the Hebrews to go forth. Donald raised his hands and parted his hair to allow his comb-over to come forth, which I thought was good. So those are the similarities. And we have one more.
As long as you land on a high note like that.
Well, one other thing is we do know that Moses was known as the most humble man who ever lived. Donald, not so much. And those were some of the similarities and differences that I mentioned. And I figured I would turn it over to you on that note to see if you've got any more or what you think about the similarities of these two great leaders.
Well, or the dissimilarities, perhaps.
Maybe.
What seems to be, I've got a little dissonance going on.
Okay.
Certain decisions that are being made, I'm not at all opposed to. As a matter of fact, I'm supportive of. I mean, I like some of the decisions that are being made. The style is really more than just doesn't sit well with me. The style, the leadership style, it kind of rankles me. I really
see that.
I'm having a hard time with it. I'm having a hard time with it.
I was a little worried about this myself.
It's not the style that I'm looking for. It's certainly not the style that I want my kids to emulate.
Right.
That's not the way we're going. And to tell you the truth, I fear for him because I think it's not sustainable.
Now you're talking about Trump, not Moses.
Yes, I'm Trump, right.
Okay, I want to make sure everybody's clear.
See, Moses' style was pretty sustainable. I mean, he really did. I think he did good. He got him all the way to the end. They didn't get into the land, but he did get through. If he could put up with them for 40 years.
Good point.
40 years. And he put up with all those people, and he managed to keep in the leadership position. But I'm not sure that this other style that President Trump has, I just don't think it's sustainable. Now, the style seems to be that anyone that says anything at all negative, I attack them viciously, which prevents anyone from saying anything negative, and therefore everything will be positive. I, on the other hand, as he will say, and I'll say positive things. In other words, everything that he does is it's the greatest, the best.
Absolutely.
The superlatives are like, he's actually writing like a new dictionary of superlatives. I never even heard so many superlatives.
He is doing it bigly, as he has said.
Right. the biggest, the best, the most, and anything, if he takes the car, it's the best car that ever was. He's driving it down the street or whatever it is, I just don't think it's sustainable, because after a while, things just don't go your way.
Right.
And after a while, you can't superlative certain facts out of an existence. But we have a midrash. I just happen to have it here.
Ah.
I'd like to quote this. This is a pretty interesting quote here.
Excuse me.
So this is talking about Aaron, actually. Aaron, the whole story you mentioned, Korach?
Mm-hmm.
The really interesting thing is, the story ostensibly was about Aaron. Korach challenged, he wanted to be the high priest. It was Moshe's appointment of Aaron as high priest that triggered the whole rebellion of Korach, which is something we're going to read about later on in the beginning of the summer. And there's a whole dispute goes on between Korach and his supporters and Moses. The interesting thing to note is we never hear anything from Aaron. Now, it's all about Aaron, but we never hear anything about Aaron. So here is a little passage from the Talmud, or actually from the Midrash. And the Midrash says that God calls himself pious, and he cites a verse in Jeremiah where God says, I am pious, so says God. King David called himself pious, as he said to God, protect me, for I am pious. So there was a rabbi named Rabbi Alexandri. Rabbi Alexandri must have been named after Alexander. Mm-hmm. And he says as follows. Now just contrast this. Whoever hears himself being cursed and remains silent is pious. That's the definition of piety.
Okay. Interesting.
David heard himself being cursed, and he was called pious. And similarly it says, whoever hears himself cursed and remains silent becomes a partner with God, because he hears all of the nations cursing him all the time, God. Wow. And God could at any moment just press the delete button. Gone.
Yep.
He certainly could, and yet he puts up with it. So he's quiet. So too King David. He heard them cursing him. People cursed him. He had advisors cursed him. He had opponents cursed him. His son cursed him. He had all kinds of things. And yet he remains pious because he heard his disgrace. He had the ability to take revenge, and he put it aside.
Well, now, in Donald's defense, David did not have Twitter.
That's right.
So you got you got to give a little bit of a leeway there to Donald on that one.
Right. But David did not launch a scribal war.
No.
He had the army. He was already king at the time. He was being trashed. He was the king.
He was the king. Okay.
Which means he had tremendous ability, tremendous resources at his fingertips, and he could have done something about it, and yet he didn't. As a matter of fact, there's a famous story where he had some opponents the opponents felt he was illegitimate. They felt he was, that his becoming king was illegitimate, that he became the king, never should have become the king.
Win the popular vote.
Right. That's right. I mean, like the John Lewises of the world,
right.
They called him an illegitimate king.
Right.
And things that he did, they were like just aghast that a Jewish king would do. And they really were promoting from within his own families, they were promoting a coup. When David was actually deposed and he had to flee Jerusalem and he was running away, one of those guys came out to holler at him, to scream at him, to scream all kinds of epitaphs and dirty names at him as he was running away. So David had his men around him, and even though they were fleeing, they said, we're going to go take the guy out. Right. And David said, no, let it go. Just let it go. Because David said, this is all part of it. If God didn't want them to curse me, he'll take them away.
Wow.
If they're cursing me, I'm supposed to be experiencing that feeling. I'm supposed to understand that not everyone likes me. Maybe I've made mistakes. Maybe it makes me humble. Whatever the purpose is, but this is a purpose. And the greatest talent, the greatest exercise of self-control, and the greatest attribute is to be humble and especially to maintain silence in the face of your critics.
Wow.
Now, many people have reacted to critics in a variety of ways. Most people respond. All presidents respond in one way or another. Some are very critical, and some like really try to fight against it. But to it goes like so overboard. To me, it looks overboard that anyone that says anything like he got very upset because they said that more people came to Obama's inauguration. I don't know if more did or more didn't. But does it really matter?
No, not much.
I mean, come on,
Not much, no.
Maybe they're lying. First of all, maybe they're telling the truth. I don't know. Obviously, he felt they weren't telling the truth, but probably he could not imagine that less people would have come to his. I think there's either he knows that they were telling the truth and he's fighting with them. In which case, what are you fighting with them for? They're just telling the truth, or he is so haughty that he can't imagine that it could possibly be that less people came to his inauguration. So where is the humility?
No, I'm going to give you that. There's not much humility right there.
Right.
It's not his best thing.
Right. So people that don't have a bit of humility ultimately are going to get nailed on something. And when you don't have any humility, you got nowhere to go. Now, if you're a humble person and you come right out and you say, listen, I might get them right. I might even get it wrong sometimes. I'm going to do my best, and I might make some mistakes. Well, when they really nail you on a mistake, you say, well, I said I'm going to do my best, but I make some mistakes sometimes.
See, that's a good point. And it reminds me of, like most things, football. Bear Bryant, best coach in football history, of course. I can't remember the team. I think it was Alabama. He might have been the coach for. He used to say,
and that's the one that lost the national championship,
no,
right?
not last year. That was this minor.
But they won the first 59 and a half minutes of the game.
Bump in the road. But my point about Bear Bryant, he used to say, if Alabama was playing Georgia Tech, he would get out in the thing and the reporters would say before the game, Coach, I guess you're going to slaughter Georgia Tech. No, we're not ready for the game. We haven't been practicing hard enough. Georgia Tech is a great team. Alabama's not that great. And I guess the reason was, if for some reason Georgia Tech were to win that game, he would say, look, it was a tough team. And if he won, okay, well, he did great to win it.
Yeah.
I don't think Donald Trump has learned the Bear Bryant approach to football.
No, it's clearly he understands and he believes, like we do with bullies sometimes. If someone bullies you, the best thing to do is really hit him in the face, and that'll stop the bullying. So, I mean, I think that he believes that, but you can really only do that so long, because you can't just go around, bruising everybody, and at some point or another, as a human being, he is going to mess up. It's just a fact. Right. And if you're humble, so when you mess up, you got natural cover for it. But if you're not humble and you mess up, you got nowhere to hide. So then you gotta deny, and then you get into this whole cycle of, no, it didn't happen, and I didn't, and you're lying, and everyone's accusing everyone, and then you just spiral.
And it happens. Take example, our past president of 3 days ago or 5 days ago, Barack Obama. As he was asked, he said everything was great. Nothing went wrong in his administration. There was as he Clintonized the words a little bit, no foreign government committed any terror act on our soil, forgetting about San Bernardino and forgetting about what happened in Orlando.
Foreign government.
So, you got to be, that's not humble either. That's not humble, and that usually...
Listen, I get it when they want to, they all try to cover up for themselves, and there's lots of lack of humility enough to go around.
This one, he's got a lot.
I've never seen, so out of the gate,
I'm with you on this
such a over-the-top lack of humility. Right. But not that, of course, anyone's surprised, because, we all saw it coming for a long time.
Yep.
But it's no surprise. It's just like he has not disappointed. At least in the lack of humility meter, he has not disappointed. And I fear for that because that is just unsustainable. The pious ones can turn to God and say, listen, God's the one that really runs the world. I'm just out here trying to do my best. Sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes I'm right. Sometimes I'm wrong. If God calls himself pious, right, and God's claim to piety, says the Midrash, is that people curse him out. And, people do curse God all the time. Matter of fact, I heard a guy just right now is coming in. He dropped something on the way in the building, and he said, God, blank,
Wow.
right there. I couldn't believe it. Cursed that guy.
In front of the rabbi.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
All he did was just he dropped something,
And that was God's fault?
Yeah.
That was pretty bad right there.
But people do that and get God sits on. I didn't see any lightning bolt come out of the sky and take the guy out. God puts up with a lot all the time. If God can put up with a lot, then we're all supposed to try to put up a lot. King David had a lot of tools at his disposal. He had a lot more tools at his disposal than the President of the United States does, who has a lot of tools at his disposal. King David had unlimited authority as a Jewish king. There is no legislation. There are no checks and balances. There's no nothing. When you're the king of Israel, you're the king, period.
Yeah, and it also could be, and I'm thinking of the times, and we've had presidents in the past, Abraham Lincoln, not Father Abraham, who was exactly what you're talking about. I mean, literally, he had people in front of his face, not behind his back, who would say, "You're dumb, you're stupid. He's a hillbilly. He is an ignorant. He looks like an ape." And people would say, and then of course Abraham Lincoln. One thing about him, he would never come back. But then they would realize when they walked out of the office, they would look for their wallet because he was smart enough, and if humble was the word, but at least humble or crafty enough to say, you can say anything you want about me as long as I get what I want in the long run. And that usually does work a little better than the Donald Trump approach. Now, we are living in different times these days where Donald Trump was the guy in The Apprentice who got to say, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired every day. And maybe once you build up this kind of image of yourself, and now I know what you're saying is correct, you can't take a step back down. So when you do get hit and something's wrong, it could be a problem.
Right, so he does not have the language to call upon. It's not in the lexicon.
Right.
And
it's like, I'm wrong.
That's what makes me fearful, because
it's a good fear.
Something's going to go wrong and it's going to come back to bite him. Where we see over and over and over again from our sages and our leaders that this is a tremendous strength. And we need to teach not only the other lesson is he's not a good role model, we need to teach strength. And strength means resolve, confidence, humility, and you don't create the reality by what you get other people to say or not to say.
No.
You have to create reality by creating real facts. You have to do things, and that's the only way to be for real. So those are, so far, I mean, I guess I can't argue with some of the facts that as they are so far. So maybe that's going on, and that's a good thing. The style, though, that's the one that's got me bothered.
I agree with this, because leaders, when it really comes down to it, the president, like of the United States, where there are three branches in a normal administration, I'm not really sure what happened in the last one, but where there are three equal branches of government, the president of the United States is not a king. The president of the United States doesn't have any more power than the Congress or the judiciary in a normal administration. So really the most important part of the president is his leadership qualities and the example that he sets for the country and how he leads. So I agree with you, even though in the background, like you and I were talking before the show, maybe the Mike Pences of the administration or the Jeff Sessions, they can go out and do good things, and Donald Trump just might be the guy, the front man. But the front man has got to put up a good image here, because that's really the main role of a president, is that.
Right.
And you can get yourself in a lot of trouble if you can't be wrong.
Right. There really is what we call role model.
Yep.
And role model is to create the type of dialogue that you would like to see happen, to create the type of conduct that you would like to see happen. We're told a lot of things about Moses. And one of them was that Moses didn't wear a hem. He didn't have cuffs at the bottom of his.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no cuffs.
Didn't read that.
Yeah, you know why no cuffs?
I don't know why.
You can always slip a coin in there, right? So he
Oh.
wanted to show all the time, no cuffs. Again, I'm not taking anything.
Interesting.
I'm not benefiting. Let no one accuse me, right? And being above and beyond. So these are things that have to do with true leadership style. Being above and beyond reproach, conducting yourself with humility, being ever faithful in a higher power, and on and on and on. So important leadership qualities that I feel are going to have to be cultivated, although this would seem like a pretty late date to start cultivating,
Right.
but they're going to have to be cultivated, otherwise it could lead to the bad leadership style could really lead to a huge distraction that could hamper the well-being of the entire country.
And it really could. And I think you hit on the most important point. If you think about it, which I'm sure you have because you read the Torah quite often, probably like right beside your bed there on the phone, you should probably read
I
that.
actually even thought about it before I said it.
Wow. That's pretty big.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen often. But I don't even
Many people don't usually do that, you know?
But the interesting is, at the end, where God could have just give every characteristic of Moses, his leadership abilities. He was a great general.
Mm-hmm.
He brought his people out of Egypt. He did all these great things. And the thing he came up with to say about Moses more than anything else is he was the most humble man that ever lived.
That's
Beside
right.
everything else, that was the most important thing. Now, how could that be the greatest leadership quality?
Yeah.
But I guess it is.
Greatest man, humblest man. Amazing.
And maybe that is a lesson. I don't know if it will be learned, but it is a
Right.
lesson that needs to be learned. That sometimes, being in your face and yelling and screaming and tweeting really loud isn't the best
I
thing.
guess if God can overlook criticism, then
Right.
so could you and me.
Well, and even Donald?
And even Donald.
Donald can overlook criticism?
That's right.
Oh, that's pretty intense. I think that might be the lesson for all of you. Not just the people out here who are criticizing Trump, because this was not the purpose of things, but even for you people on the other side of this thing that are out there marching around and saying, maybe a little humility goes a long way here.
Right, we could all use a little humility.
Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, that's a great lesson. That's almost a kumbaya lesson. I like
There
that.
you go.
All right, next week for another lesson
Right.
on Jeff and the Rabbi.